Brandon Williams just had the best year of his professional basketball life and nobody seems to care. Days away from the chaos of free agency, a guard who just averaged 13 points a game for the Dallas Mavericks is still sitting at home. He is waiting for the phone to ring. Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype just dropped a massive report indicating that the Boston Celtics are seriously circling the 26-year-old guard. But Boston is not alone in this hunt. They are staring down competition from the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors, and the very franchise Williams just poured his heart out for. The Dallas Mavericks want to retain him, but the business of basketball is never that simple. This is a story about how harsh the professional sports world can be. You can double your playing time, start 15 games, drop a career high in points, and still find yourself fighting for a roster spot. Fully understand why Brandon Williams is such a fascinating target for a championship contender like Boston. We have to look at his brutal journey. This is a guy who thought his basketball career was effectively over just a few years ago. He was a highly touted recruit who committed to play for the Arizona Wildcats. He had a solid freshman season, showing flashes of the speed and playmaking that would eventually make him a professional prospect. Then disaster struck in the worst possible way. He was diagnosed with a severe knee condition called osteochondritis dissecans. This condition required a major surgery that forced him to miss his entire sophomore season. For a young guard relying on blistering speed, a major knee surgery is often a death sentence for their draft stock. The setback ultimately prompted him to leave school early and pursue a professional career anyway, completely undrafted. Every single team in the league passed on him. He was forced to grind his way through the developmental league just to get noticed by a scouting department. He joined the Westchester Knicks and played his heart out, eventually earning a call up to the Portland Trail Blazers. He showed real promise in Portland, averaging nearly 13 points across 24 appearances, but his shooting percentages were poor, and Portland eventually let him go. They sent him right back to the grueling reality of the minor leagues. For a small guard, getting sent back down usually spells the absolute end of the road. Most players fade into obscurity or head overseas to make a living, but Williams simply refused to quit. He continued to excel against lower-level competition, waiting for another franchise to give him a second chance. He finally earned a two-way contract with the Dallas Mavericks in 2023, and that leads us directly to his massive breakout campaign last season. Williams played in 66 games for the Mavericks, doubling his previous career high in appearances. Whenever he stepped on the floor, he proved the oldest basketball saying completely true. Speed absolutely kills. Standing at just 6'1", Williams uses a lethal combination of quickness and crafty ball handling to relentlessly attack the rim. He is an absolute nightmare for opposing defenses when he gets a slower player switched onto him. If a big center ends up guarding him on the perimeter, it is almost a guaranteed bucket or a foul. And speaking of fouls, his ability to get to the free throw line is truly elite for a backup point guard. Generated nearly 5 attempts from the charity stripe per game last season. That sky-high free throw rate actually ranked in the top 10 among all qualified players in the entire association. He ranked right up there with the biggest superstars in the game when it came to drawing contact. When you combine that with his ability to finish well at the rim, despite his lack of size, you have a wildly efficient downhill scorer. He even averaged nearly 1 steal per game, showing that his speed translates directly to the defensive side of the ball. So why is a guy with this kind of production still completely unsigned a month into free agency? Why is the rest of the league treating him like an afterthought? The answer lies strictly beyond the three-point arc. Williams is simply not a reliable outside shooter. He registered a career conversion rate well below 30%. Last season, he hit an abysmal 23% of his deep attempts. In the modern era of basketball, floor spacing is absolutely everything. Offenses are built entirely around the threat of the three-point shot. Guards who cannot stretch the floor are often treated as massive liabilities, no matter how good they are at driving to the basket. Defenses will simply pack the paint and dare him to shoot, completely ruining the offensive flow for his teammates. This brings us to the Boston Celtics and their current complicated roster puzzle. Boston currently relies on Mike Conley as their primary backup point guard. Conley is a respected legend, but he is entering his 20th season in the league. The Celtics know they have a very delicate situation on their hands. They need to optimize Conley for a long playoff run without completely burning him out during the grueling regular season.
The 82-game season is a marathon that destroys older players.
Bringing in another primary ball handler is not just a luxury for Boston right now. It is an absolute necessity if they want to survive the winter months without running their veterans into the ground. Williams fits the exact physical profile of an energy guard who can eat up regular season minutes. He can push the pace, collapse tired defenses and get easy points at the free throw line while the starters catch their breath. But the Celtics front office is playing a very dangerous game of financial chess. Boston currently sits just under $2 million below the dreaded luxury tax line. They have maneuvered brilliantly over the past few years to position themselves to reset the repeater tax. Let us talk about the repeater tax for a second because it dictates everything in the modern basketball economy. When a team goes over the luxury tax line multiple years in a row, the penalties multiply exponentially. Owners end up paying $3 or $4 in pure taxes for every single dollar they spend on a player's salary. It becomes financially ruinous even for billionaires. The Boston Celtics are incredibly close to slipping under that line and resetting the clock. That reset is essentially the holy grail for a front office trying to keep a championship window open for the next decade. Signing Brandon Williams to a standard minimum contract sounds cheap to a casual fan. But when you factor in the potential tax penalties, that minimum contract could realistically cost the ownership group millions of dollars. Precisely why they prefer a two-way deal. Two-way contracts do not count against the salary cap in the same manner. They offer front offices a massive loophole to acquire talent without enraging the accounting department. They would get a proven 13-point-per-game scorer at a fraction of the cost. They would completely avoid the luxury tax penalty while adding vital depth to their backcourt. But we have to look at this from the perspective of the player involved. Williams just had the best year of his entire life. He proved without a shadow of a doubt that he belongs in a standard rotation. Accepting a two-way deal feels like a massive step backward for a guy who just clawed his way out of the minor leagues. There are serious and valid questions about how well he would buy into a two-way role. He was arguably one of the most impactful players on the Mavericks roster last year. Advanced metrics loved him. He ranked incredibly high on the team in value over replacement player and player efficiency rating. He is a battle-tested veteran who just carried a significant offensive load for a playoff contender. If Williams decides he deserves better than a two-way contract, Boston already has a backup plan in motion. Enter Milos Uzan. The former Houston Cougars point guard turned a lot of heads playing for Boston during the Las Vegas exhibition games. Uzan is heading into training camp at the Auerbach Center on an Exhibit 10 deal. He is young, hungry, cheap, and perfectly fine with accepting a two-way spot if it means keeping his dream alive. As Uzan fights tooth and nail during training camp, he is currently the heavy favorite to claim that final two-way vacancy. This puts tremendous pressure on Williams to make a decision quickly before the market completely dries up. If Boston pivots entirely to Uzan, one of the best landing spots for Williams suddenly vanishes into thin air. We cannot ignore the other teams circling in the water right now. The Dallas Mavericks still hold his early bird rights. This gives them a distinct financial advantage if they want to bring him back into the fold. They can offer him slightly more money than a team armed only with a minimum exception. Dallas underwent a massive front office makeover this summer. Masai Ujiri is now their president of basketball operations, bringing a completely new championship philosophy to the team. But their new general manager, Mike Schmitz, is extremely familiar with Williams. Schmitz was the assistant general manager for the Portland Trail Blazers back when Williams was playing in the Pacific Northwest. That pre-existing relationship could be the absolute key to bringing the California native back to Dallas. But even Dallas is dealing with a severe roster crunch. They drafted heavily this summer, leaving very few guaranteed spots available for returning veterans. Drafted Sergio De La Rey late in the first round, adding another young guard to a crowded backcourt. Even with the familiarity of Mike Schmitz in the front office, the math just might not work out for a reunion in Texas. Then you have the Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns lurking in the background. Both of those teams are desperate for cheap rim-pressuring talent to surround their expensive superstars. Let's look deeper into the situation with the Golden State Warriors. Steve Kerr runs a system predicated on chaos, constant movement, and split-second decision-making. They do not necessarily need their guards to isolate and dribble the air out of the ball. They need players who can read the defense, cut hard, and finish through contact when the defense scrambles to cover the perimeter. Williams has the exact motor required to thrive in the Bay Area. His lack of outside shooting is less of a death sentence when you are sharing the court with elite shooters. He would be tasked with putting immense pressure on the rim, forcing defenses to collapse inward. That to the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix is extremely top-heavy with expensive perimeter scorers who prefer to operate in the mid-range, desperately lack players who can get downhill and force the referees to blow the whistle. Williams drew fouls on roughly 11% of his drives last season. That ranks among the absolute best slashers in the world. For a Phoenix team that often settles for tough jump shots, having a spark plug who aggressively attacks the paint would be a breath of fresh air. He would give their second unit a completely different offensive dimension. If Williams goes to Phoenix, he might instantly become their most reliable backup guard option. It is a fascinating standoff between a player who finally proved his worth and a league that is terrified of his shooting splits. He earned exactly $1.2 million a year on his last contract. By the standards of professional basketball, that is an incredibly modest and affordable salary. He is turning 27 this November. This means he is entering the absolute prime of his athletic career. He knows that his next contract, no matter who signs it, is probably going to be for modest money again, but he desperately wants the security of a standard roster spot. He does not want the precarious life of a two-way player, constantly wondering if he will be cut tomorrow. The Boston Celtics represent the ultimate test of his true market value. Their head coach, Joe Mazzulla, runs an offense that demands elite perimeter shooting from almost every position on the floor. If Boston is willing to overlook his 23% shooting from deep, it means they see something incredibly special. You might believe their elite floor spacing will open up even wider driving lanes for his blistering speed. With shooters standing in both corners, opposing centers cannot step up to block his path to the rim. Or they might believe their elite development staff can finally fix his broken jump shot. If Williams can even become a league-average shooter from the corner, his value skyrockets overnight. He would transform from a fringe rotation player into a highly sought-after core piece. Till that magical shooting improvement happens, he remains the most intriguing wild card left on the free agent market. Will he swallow his pride and take a two-way deal with a championship contender like Boston? Will Mike Schmitz and the Dallas Mavericks reward his loyalty and bring him back into their crowded backcourt? Or will a team like Phoenix swoop in at the 11th hour and offer him the guaranteed money he so desperately wants? The clock is ticking loudly on free agency, and training camps are right around the corner. For a guy who just averaged 13 points a game on a playoff team, the silence is utterly deafening. It just goes to show that in this league, raw numbers do not always guarantee financial security. Your physical fit, the timing of the market, and luxury tax aprons often matter more than anything else. Matter more than how many highlight reel buckets you can score on a random Tuesday night. Brandon Williams is waiting patiently for his moment to strike. The entire landscape of the Eastern and Western Conference's bench rotations could shift, depending on where he signs. It is a major calculated gamble for whatever front office decides to take the leap of faith. But for a player who has beaten the odds his entire life, betting on himself is the only play he knows.